Hey everybody, Antony here with a review of Thomas Ades' Powder Her Face, which was shown at the University of Westminster, specifically at Ambika P3. The conductor was Timothy Redmond, the assistant conductor was Christopher White, the leader of this production was Janice Graham, the director of this production was Joe Hill Gibbons, the designer was Ades, the assistant designer was Mark Simmons, the lighting designer was Adam Silverman, and the movement director was Imogen Knight. Now, this was an opera I've never really heard of before, and basically have stumbled by chance through looking at the events that were shown at the English National Opera, only except this opera wasn't shown at the English National Opera. It was basically shown, like I've mentioned, at the University of Westminster. And good thing I made it there because, well, funny story. I thought that this opera was going to be at the English National Opera House. Unfortunately, I realized through the ticket that it was actually at the University of Westminster. Nonetheless, I was still able to catch the opera in time with 20 minutes to spare. Yeah, I was pretty much lucky to have made it to this production. Now, with that aside, now this opera, like I said, I've never really heard of this before, but I've heard about Thomas Ades' other opera, The Tempest, with this high-flying soprano part of Ariel, which was created by Cynthia Seddon. Now, I've never really heard of this opera before, like Powder Her Face, but it's easy to say that this opera, Powder Her Face, is a killer for all four principal voices, whether you have two sopranos, one tenor, and one basso. It's a killer for all of these parts. You have all of these high notes, low notes, everything else in between, and a lot of histrionics. But I'll get into further detail on that once I talk about the singers. Now, this is an opera that I didn't really expect to be a full-on tragedy with some comedic elements. I almost expected it to be a dramedy. But little did I know, I realized that this opera was a biopic, so to say, of one Margaret Whigham, who was the Duchess of England back in the 50s and 60s, also in the 70s and 80s. Yeah, this basically talks about her tragic tale of the many affairs that she had and the troubles that she went through with the Parliament, with the law, and mostly with herself as a person. It's no wonder why this opera is entitled Powder Her Face, because she basically uses all of these exterior methods of beauty, like applying makeup, just to simply mask all of the tragedies that she had growing up and all the tragedies that she had regarding her many affairs and also her inner turmoil. So yeah, it's pretty much a mask that she uses all throughout this opera, especially in the interview scene, and I thought it was just heartbreaking all throughout. So yes, this opera was pretty much exciting. I'm not really a huge fan of modern opera, but that's pretty much my taste. I'm not really a huge fan of those musically dissonant tones that are usually associated with these type of operas. But I guess for an experience, it's actually pretty worthwhile, especially when you have fantastic singers. Now, going into the production, this entire opera, well, in this production, was all set in Duchess Margaret's hotel room. It's all decorated pink. She has a huge mirror. She has all of these nice appliances, a nice table, and every nice bit of furniture. It's basically used to show that this is her world. This is how she sees her life. This is how she sees things in her life. And I thought it was able to project it really well, especially that, like I said, it's her story and her story alone, nobody else's. And the costumes, I have to say, were actually pretty good all throughout. They actually resonated with the time that the opera takes place. You have one scene that took place in the 70s, another that took place in the 30s, then in the 40s, the 50s, 60s, and then the 70s. Yeah, I thought the costumes were pretty good all throughout. I especially love the array of costumes that the Duchess had. I thought they were all gorgeous. I thought just wow. Every piece of costume that the Duchess wore just screamed beauty, just screamed just pure gorgeousness all around. So yeah, the production and costumes I thought were absolutely great, and the lighting was just spot on. Now, one more thing I'd like to mention about this production is that it kind of has a film-like quality to it. Film-like as in, think about watching a Wes Anderson film. You'll actually see that there are some screens projected in the left side and in the right side, and there are two screens basically from each side with the stagehands writing what happened. Basically, for example, Duchess and the Duke, 1936. Yeah, that pretty much reminded me of a Wes Anderson film, or even that of a Tim Burton film, where you have all of these images popping up from a film, basically, from either their films. And I thought it really added to the imaginative world that I got myself into. I thought it was a very creative method that the people behind this production were able to do. I thought they were absolutely fantastic all throughout. Yes, in short, production and costumes, awesome. And now we get to the singers, and this is the part where I'm really going to be very specific about why this opera in particular is such a killer for four main voices. And in the role of the Duchess, we have British lyric soprano Amanda Rucroft, who basically specializes in the full lyric soprano repertoire of Donna Elvira, Fiordaligi, and Desdemona. And she also sings some repertoire from the spinto soprano repertoire, like Madama Butterfly and Elisabetta di Valois. This role, the Duchess, pretty much requires either a full lyric soprano with dramatic soprano capabilities, or even that of a full-on spinto soprano, who is able to sing all of the low notes very well, and has to have a good top, and it sits quite easily, mostly on the middle section. But it's not really for a mezzo. Oh no. There are some high notes that the soprano sings when singing the Duchess. And dramatically speaking, this role is also quite exhausting because there are moments when the Duchess will go hysterical, will cry, will scream, will try to be as composed as possible in order to hide all that chaos that's brimming inside her and every piece of complex emotion that she has as a person. And I thought Amanda Rucroft pulled off the role of the Duchess very, very well. Not to mention, she pretty much has an uncanny appearance, almost looking like the Duchess. Don't believe me? Take a look. Now compare this picture of Duchess Margaret, somewhere right here. Yeah, compare this picture right here, and I'll turn the page and see which one is Amanda Rucroft. Hang on for a second. Yeah, and compare Amanda Rucroft right over here. It's almost quite uncanny, isn't it? Not only was she able to portray the Duchess very well, but she was the Duchess. She played the Duchess's torment and just overall pain to a T, where she's not playing the Duchess, but she was the Duchess. And her solid singing technique really helped her performance very beautifully. There was not one single note where I felt that it was wobbling or that it was unsteady. Every single line that Madame Rucroft sang was just elegant, was just so full of frisson. And it was just a beautiful instrument that kind of reminded me of singers like Victoria de los Angeles, or even that of Ingrid Bjorna, or to some extent Inga Bock. I thought she was just absolutely fantastic in this role. And then in the role of the Duke, we have basso Alan Ewing. Now, the role of the Duke is basically a killer for a basso as well. Not only does he have a lot of low Fs, low Es, and low Ds to sing, but he also has some high notes to sing, like a high F or a high F sharp or probably a high G in between. It's pretty much a killer, and any basso who dares sing the role of the Duke from Powder Her Face is pretty much capable of singing roles like Philip II, Hagen, Hunding, Fasolt, Gurnemant, the title role of Boris Godunov, Gremin, and every other basso cantante and basso profondo part that comes off the top of my head. And I thought Alan Ewing gave such a magnificent performance. His stage presence as the Duke was extremely riveting. I was pretty much caught on the edge of my seat just watching his every glare, his every movement on stage. It was just so addicting just to watch this fantastic basso sing all of those low notes with such power and authority. It was just simply breathtaking all around. He was able to give the Duke a very noble exterior, but also a very tortured exterior as well, because he's also an alcoholic. He does screw some whores behind his wife's back. And yeah, he's also damn screwed up himself. The character, not the singer. But overall, I felt that Alan Ewing's performance as the Duke was just simply marvelous. And his basso voice definitely was the hugest asset of this character. And then we have the role of the electrician, sung by tenor Alexander Sprague. Alexander Sprague. Yeah. Basically, the role of the electrician requires a lyric tenor who is very capable of singing the Mozart and bel canto repertoire. He has to sing a lot of florid lines, and he does have some high notes, specifically a lot of B's, B flats, and a few C's in between, but mostly B's and B flats. He also has to have such a gorgeous sounding voice, but not just gorgeous, but extremely incisive as well. And I thought that Alexander Sprague was just fantastic. He was able to give such a freshness to this character. His voice was extremely fresh all throughout. It has such a vivacity, such youthfulness, and such elegance and grace that it was just so breathtaking. And I thought his acting was pretty spot on too. He was able to play the comical side of his character and also that of the more dramatic side of his character. When he's comical, he basically is sharp and quite goofy at times, but mostly sharp and ironic. But when he's dramatic, he's quite believable. He was absolutely solid all throughout. And then we have the role of the maid, sung by coloratura soprano Claire Eggington. Now, the maid is a killer of a soprano role, specifically for a lyric coloratura soprano. This role is just as difficult as the Queen of the Night, Constanza, Blondchen, Donna Anna, Fiordaligi, Aspasia, Elettra, Elia, Ismene, Giunia, Luciocina. Serbinetta, Fiaccamilli, Aitra, Lulu, Gilda, Violetta, and Oscar, and a lot of other lyric coloratura and dramatic coloratura soprano roles that come off the top of my head. That is just how tough this role is as a whole. She has a lot of high notes to sing, a lot of coloratura to sing all around. We're talking arpeggios, we're talking runs, trills, and all of the stuff that is associated to coloratura singing. And I thought Miss Eggington was able to pull off this killer of a role very beautifully with such a high-flying voice that was able to soar very beautifully to such beautiful high notes, whether it's a C sharp, a D, E, F, especially when she's laughing those high notes. I thought she was just wonderful. This is a vocal tour de force performance that she did and that she pulled off, and I thought she pulled it off very, very flawlessly. I felt that among all the singers in this opera, I thought that Miss Eggington was able to portray this role with such finesse in terms of her voice. I felt that vocally, she was the best performer all throughout this opera. Don't get me wrong, every one of them was just fantastic all throughout. More than fantastic, I would say they were very outstanding performers. But I have to say that I really have a soft spot for high singing singers, and Claire Eggington is one of them. She is totally up there with the likes of Ingeborg Hallstein, Lucia Popp, Madore Robin, Maddy Mesplé, but compared to the likes of Maddy Mesplé, her voice is a lot fuller than that of Madame Mesplé's voice. Sure, it does have that bird-like quality, but it is just an incisive quality that she has to her voice, and that's able to sing all of those high notes with such frisson that it's just absolutely thrilling to listen to. So I thought the singers were just outstanding all throughout, and the conducting, even though I'm not really a huge modern opera fan, I have to say was extremely spot on all throughout. It was able to keep up that dissonance, that type of disturbing feeling that you have inside that makes you wonder, oh my goodness, what the hell's gonna happen next? And I thought the conductors, Mr. Redmond and Mr. White, were able to just do their thing very well along with the orchestra. And the stagehands, I thought, were absolutely fantastic in the roles of the servants. So overall, even though I don't really have such a soft spot for modern opera, I definitely have to say that this was such a tour de force of an opera that I really, really enjoyed because of all of the fantastic singers, from Madame Rucroft to Monsieur Ewing to Mr. Sprague, and finally the wonderful Miss Eggington. I thought they were all outstanding all throughout. I know this is the last performance, and I'm actually glad that I caught this performance. I really have to say that kudos to every singer that participated in this opera. Kudos to the director, and kudos to everyone who made this opera possible to be performed in the University of Westminster. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in tomorrow where I have a double whammy Easter Sunday review special, so to say. First one being my review of the Catalea Quintet, which are going to be playing at the Royal Albert Hall, and a review of Bell 10W Head, also playing at the Royal Albert Hall. Until then, this is Antoni signing off and wishing you all a good night, and I hope you all have a blessed Black Saturday.